Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Navigating the Changing Landscape of OSHA Reporting, brought to you by Dakota Software. My name is Bob Kimball. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Dakota, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. I'd like to start by thanking everyone for joining us. We decided to do a webinar on this topic because we were getting a lot of questions from our clients about COVID-related reporting, requirements for uploading of data, and for our incident management clients, how to export their data for uploading to OSHA's injury tracking application, which is actually pretty simple, and we'll touch on that later. We expect this webinar will be about 45 minutes long. Due to the large number of participants, all attendees are currently muted, but we do welcome your questions. You can submit questions at any point through the Q&A panel. We'll do our best to answer questions on the fly. If questions can't be quickly answered via chat, we're going to address those questions, as many of those questions as possible, at the conclusion of the presentation. We also really want this to be an interactive session, so we're going to be conducting some brief polls throughout. We're hoping you can use these polls, benchmark yourself against your peers, and just to kind of get a pulse of the people in the room. I'd like to introduce our speakers today, my colleagues, Jay Finnegan and Cody Burke. Jay Finnegan is a member of Dakota's Compliance Services team, where he is responsible for assisting clients with the implementation of Dakota's products. Prior to joining Dakota, he held a variety of educational, technical, and managerial positions, including 12 years of environmental health and safety management roles. Mr. Finnegan has degrees in mechanical engineering, business administration, operations research, and law. He also holds CHMM and lean manufacturing certifications. We'll also be hearing from Cody Burke. Cody joined Dakota in 2013 and spent more than 5 years in business development, where he introduced organizations to Dakota's products. In his current role as a solutions consultant, he leads product demonstrations focused on aligning the software solutions to individual company needs. Cody has made numerous presentations on EHS data management systems while working with companies of all sizes across industries. I'll now turn it over to Jay and Cody.
Well, welcome everybody. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to start out just by looking at the brief review of the actual reporting requirements. And so the first part is, how did that go backward? Here we go. Who has to keep injury records? So this would be your OSHA logs, your OSHA, the OSHA log itself. And the rule says that if you have more than 10 employees as an annual average, and if your NAICS code is not exempted, or if you have been specifically directed to record the data. So that's the log itself. There's also a separate requirement about whether or not you have to submit data to OSHA's injury tracking application, ITA. So if you're a large facility with 250 or more employees, you are required to do that. If you're the 20 to 249 employees inclusive and you fall into select NAICS codes, you have to submit that OSHA 300A annual summary data. Or once again, if OSHA has specifically directed you to submit the data, then you also have to submit it at that time. So what data do you need to put either on the OSHA 300 log or the 300A? Actually, this is a 300A for either the one that gets posted, that you have to post every year between February 1st and April 30th, or the upload or the submission to ITA by March 2nd. And obviously you need some injury counts, fatalities, lost time and the like. You need some number of days. You need the injury types and those categories that OSHA has set up. You also need some established.
Okay, do we?
Am
oh,
I
wait,
back?
You're back. We temporarily lost you, Jay, but we can hear you again. Can't see you, but we can hear you. There you go.
Do I still have control, or do you have control? Okay, I've got the control. I need to go back to that slide. I need to move this over there. So anyway, we need the establishment information. Most of the information is the same on both the report for posting as well as the report for the data submitted to the ITA. There are a few flags, like there's no injuries flag or your establishment type and size flag. That's part of the data that you provide to the ITA. And of course, the single biggest thing that's different on the OSHA 300A that you post is the signature by a company executive. Here we go, too far. Some of the deadlines that you just, and this should be, should all be familiar with these, but as a reminder, in terms of the OSHA log itself, you have 7 days to enter information on that log, and it has to be maintained 5 years. So if there are any updates to a injury that occurred within that 5-year look back, then you need to do the update. The 300A annual summary, the one that's posted, that's your February 1st and April 30th has to be posted. And then the annual data to ITA by March 2nd. Independent of that information and those reporting requirements, there are some other reporting deadlines that a company has to meet. If you have a fatality, you have to notify OSHA within 8 hours. Hospitalizations, amputations, eye loss, you've got a 24-hour reporting deadline. And as I was prepping for this, I saw some other interesting parts of the rule. And I'm just curious how well all of you know those rules. So I've got 3 other scenarios up here. Heart attacks, incidents involving public transportation, and incidents involving other motor vehicles or involving other motor vehicles on a public street or highway. Are these things reportable to OSHA? Just give you a moment. Hopefully you've had a chance to think about that. And heart attacks, even though they ordinarily or often are not recordable because it's a personal condition, which means it's not work related, you actually have to report them to OSHA. If we've got public transportation, those do not get reported to OSHA. And if you do have these other incidents on a public street and they occur in a construction zone, those are reportable to OSHA. Is a COVID case recordable? And the answer is maybe. So it's the COVID case, it starts with first, it actually has to be confirmed as COVID. Then the question is it work related? And finally, it's got to meet any of the general recording criteria, such as days away, restricted duty, medical treatment, any of those items. And obviously, the big question in this, is it work related? OSHA tells us that they will consider this case work related. And they're going to look basically, this is guidance from May of last year, a couple of items. What did you do to investigate whether it's work related and to protect your employees? So it's fine for you to ask, how do you think that employee contracted the COVID? And at least within a degree, you can ask whether that employee engaged in activities outside of work that may have led to the infection. Certainly, one of the big ones is going to be, what have you done to protect your employees within the workplace? Some of the evidence that OSHA will consider when they decide if it's work related or not is, did you have a lot of people in that employee's work area who came down with it? Did you have a confirmed case and this person came down shortly after this? And then the third one is, if you have workers who go out into the community and you've got ongoing transmission in the community, and after these work activities of this worker out there, if they come back and they get it, this could all be evidence of a work-related infection. And if you are not aware, hot off the press, this came out last Friday, OSHA issued new guidance of things that they basically expect employers to do to protect their employees, starting with the designation of a specific person as a workplace coordinator. And I'm not going to go through all of these items. But you can take a look. What measures have you done to protect the people in the workplace? Do you have effective communications? Have you trained your workers? Have you minimized the impact of isolation and quarantine? And have you really tried to make sure that if they can telework, you've got those kind of systems in place? There's that enhanced cleaning, disinfection, um, providing guidance on screening and testing. One that I thought was kind of interesting is down here at number 14. They actually encourage employers to make the vaccine available at no cost to their eligible employees. And important to all of this COVID, and this goes back, I mean, sure, many of you have seen, is don't forget about other applicable OSHA standards. There were any number of healthcare facilities that told their employees they were now required to wear N95 or better respirators, and that is a respirator, and that meant they triggered OSHA's one respiratory protection standard. And these facilities, they weren't doing the training, they weren't doing the fit testing, they weren't doing the health evaluation. And there were a lot of penalties that came out of that. And that takes us to poll number 1.
All right, great. Thanks, Jay. So we'll do our first poll related to the handling of COVID-related OSHA recordables. So I will go ahead, oops. I'm gonna go ahead and launch that poll so everyone should see this on their screen. I'd like to point out that this poll is anonymous. We won't be capturing any information from this related to your registration information. So there's anonymity here. We'll give everyone a few minutes to go ahead and respond to that, and then we'll share the results with everyone. Okay, looks like getting close. We'll keep that open just for another 5-10 seconds. All right, we're going to go ahead and end the poll and share these results. And luckily, most people did not have COVID related recordables. Jay, anything to add to this? What you'd expect?
I can't say that this is good. I'm really glad that most people did not have any OSHA recordables that were COVID cases. One of the interesting ones, of course, in all of this was the scenario that is brought up by the last two options here about, is this a privacy case? And of course, any OSHA recordable would be a privacy case if the employee specifically asked for it.
Okay, great. And we did get a couple of questions. So Jay, I don't know if those are things that you feel comfortable responding to via the Q&A panel. That's great. If not, maybe we can address some of those at the end. So now we're going to move on. And I'm going to give control over to Cody.
All right,
Cody,
thank you very much,
take it
Bob.
away.
Thank you, Jay. Now that we know the who, the what, and the when regarding OSHA reporting, we'd like to review some of the common strategies for documenting and managing this information. More specifically, some of the challenges that come along with those strategies and what Dakota Software has done to address those challenges. So first, we have your standard written policies and SOPs. These typically rely on paper documentation, which does support no minimal data collection requirements and results in many times uncontrolled copies of printed outdated versions. Relies on manual distribution of information, which requires you to train and ask employees to adhere to the notification requirements, both internally and externally. Also results in duplicate data entry when it comes to transferring this written information into manually maintained OSHA logs and other record keeping initiatives, typically in Excel. Perhaps a step up from written paper-based systems would be internal software and other third-party systems. These do tend to be clunky, outdated, unreliable, and many times provide little to no ability to configure, which means any time saved in one part of the process may be lost due to inconsistencies in other parts of the process. Not to mention they're difficult to access, possibly due to network requirements, but also many of these systems require a password for something as simple as reporting a first report of an incident. They also lack advanced features that you may expect in today's world, such as automated email notifications, report mapping, as well as trend analysis. So now let's take a look at Dakota Software's application for incident management, which was designed to support organizations with their OSHA record keeping and reporting obligations. And we're going to highlight 4 key areas of this application. First being the ability to report an incident, which can be done by anyone, anywhere, at any time, without requiring a password for this purpose. So that includes the ability to use a desktop or personal computer, maybe a shared kiosk, as well as a mobile device. Dakota normalizes information, which means you can keep data consistent using drop downs and checklists. We also have the ability to set required fields, workflows, and tooltips to help ensure that you're capturing information that might be required to investigate the injury or illness with every single report that's been submitted, as well as a single universally used version, which is going to eliminate the risk of any uncontrolled paper copies being distributed across the workplace. We also give you the ability to configure automated email notifications, which can be triggered anytime throughout the process from that first report of incident through investigation and even as corrective actions are identified and managed to completion. These can be controlled throughout the entire organization from site level through corporate and give you the ability to utilize advanced settings in order to trigger the notifications based off of location, type of incident, severity, and so on. As you might expect, the notifications are immediate. So as soon as these conditions are met, an email will be triggered, which provides a summary of the event as well as a direct link to the incident report within the software. The database itself enables reliable record keeping. So as these injuries and illnesses are submitted into the system, you're able to document all of the information, again, from that first report all the way through investigation. Supporting attachments help to ensure that all information is kept in a single central location. And collaboration tools such as notes or journals, alerts and notifications help with problem solving. For example, as Jay was reviewing just a moment ago, trying to determine whether a COVID case would be considered reportable. We also have an event log, which is going to capture every single action taken throughout the process, the user that took that action and the date and time of the action. The system is accessible based off specific roles and locations across the organization. So users will only have access to information that's associated with them. Those users are able to set up specific data tables and views for seeing and manipulating information. We also have the ability to support advanced filtering and trend analysis with all of the records that are kept in the system. And last, we'll like to highlight the ability to facilitate OSHA reports. So along with submitting an injury or illness into the system, we also give you the ability to normalize the head count and man hours information that would be required to submit with your 300A. We combine this information and allow you to actually export incident reports, including OSHA 300, 300A in both the standard format for posting at the facility, as well as the electronic format that would be uploaded directly to OSHA's incident tracking application, as well as the 301 for individual injuries. These reports can be downloaded for single facilities or rolled up for multiple levels of insight across your organization. They can also be scheduled to be emailed to specific users or groups of users at predetermined intervals. And that leads us to the second poll question.
All right, great. Thank you, Cody. So our second poll is related to collection of injury and illness data. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this now. So you should be seeing this on your screen. And how do you currently collect OSHA record keeping and reporting information? And so we'll give everyone a few minutes to, or a few seconds to answer that question. And then we'll go ahead and share the results. All right, 10 more seconds, everybody, please. All right, we're going to close this and share the results. And so we can see a lot of people are still using written policies, paper, and spreadsheets, surprisingly. And I know we have a lot of Dakota clients on the call, but only a few who are actually maybe people who are doing the incident management application. So that's interesting. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn this back over to Jay now. And Jay, you should have control.
Okay. The interesting number in that last poll was how many companies use their own software. Okay. There we go. So the submission of the data to the OSHA's incident tracking application has introduced a new risk to employees. It's not necessarily brand new. It's been around for a couple of years. On the standpoint of the COVID-19 in particular, the very end of last year, Department of Labor released this press release where they had just under $4 million in violations. Now, this is all violations like those respiratory protection ones I talked about. But it is interesting down here, the third and fourth bullets, to note how many that failure to report injuries and illnesses and failure to record the injuries and illnesses in the OSHA record keeping were part of the fines that were captured specifically due to COVID. Let's go to the next one. This is where I said it's not a real new. Back in, you see, 2018, even EHS Today talked about OSHA was going to crack down on the failure to file the reports. And you can see from the penalty table below, the posting requirements and these record keeping requirements are of the serious nature. So they start at $13,000 per violation. And of course, if you wind up being a repeat offender and you show that willful disregard, then it can go up to $136,000 per violation. By far, the most common trigger to have OSHA come knocking at your door is going to continue to be a worker complaint. But back in 2018, OSHA established the site-specific targeting initiative. They called it SST 16, where they are really going to be looking at the data that is being submitted to ITA, and they're going to focus mostly on the more serious injuries, the DART rates. And they're going to use that to determine whether or not an inspection is warranted. I found no statistics that said, so this comes out 2018, 2019 had a record of 33,000 inspections. I found nothing that said how many originated because of the ITA analysis, but I think it's safe to say that some did, and there's a risk that more will continue to be a factor. So what if OSHA does show up? Of course, they're going to look, we know they're looking at record keeping more closely. Is it timely? Is it accurate? They've always done that, but there's increased emphasis on this now. They're going to look at your safety incentive programs. So part of the anti-retaliation rule that came out in 2016 said they do not want companies discouraging reporting. If we go a year without a OSHA recordable injury or a year without having any serious injuries, we throw a lunch for our workers. OSHA was going to see that as tending to discourage reporting. If we have over-reliance on a lagging indicator, we pay bonuses based on the TRIR, the DART rates. OSHA is going to look at that as discouraging reporting, and this can get a company in trouble. If we're only disciplining people who get hurt, um, this can get a company in trouble. And drug testing programs. If you do not believe that drugs or alcohol actually contributed to the incident, many companies had an incident occurred, we're going to test. That kind of blanket testing is no longer allowed unless it's required by another rule, with the DOT being the most commonly cited rule. You have to have reasonable belief that the drugs or alcohol actually contributed. So what kind of protective measures can you take? Well, we know they're looking at the record keeping with even more emphasis. Let's train our record keepers, make sure that they understand what they need to put into these OSHA logs and the injury records. You can audit those records internally to make sure that people are doing the record keeping correctly. Develop and use leading indicators instead of those lagging ones, and reward the safety performance based on leading, not lagging indicators. We can educate the employees on how and when to report injuries, explain to them their rights and the employer prohibitions, and we can make sure that our drug testing policies limit testing to when it is appropriate, either required by law or we have that reasonable suspicion. And of course, we have a new administration who, even in their first few weeks, have been pretty active in the worker safety realm. The day after he was inaugurated, he issued this executive order that was primarily focused on COVID. The OSHA was required to revise their guidance within 2 weeks. We saw just a short while ago the revised guidance. They're still considering an emergency temporary standard, and they're even looking at a national enforcement program. Is it possible that the Biden administration will increase the number of OSHA inspectors? I mean, obviously it's possible. And if they do, then there will be more inspections. The original electronic reporting rule had larger companies submitting their 300 and 301 data. And there were a lot of concerns about privacy. Those concerns still exist. In fact, the ITA itself was hacked about 3 months before the rule went into effect. So, but notwithstanding that, there are a lot of organizations that are pushing to have that kind of data submitted to OSHA, and it may come back. It's possible that we'll have new standards coming out of OSHA under this administration: infectious diseases, ergonomics, heat illness. OSHA actually published a preliminary or proposed ergonomic standard in 1999, never got finalized. Is Biden's administration the one that's going to dust off the cobwebs and bring it to life? And could there be stricter enforcement of that anti-retaliation rule, where they're looking at practices and reward systems and how you either test? But is there anything your organization does that could be has the tendency to discourage reporting of incidents? And I will hand off to Cody now.
All right, thanks again, Jay. Just gotta back up here. There we go. So now that Jay has covered the increased risk due to electronic reporting and the changing administration, we'd like to highlight some of the ways Dakota's broader proactivity suite is helping organizations manage and mitigate this risk. We won't be providing a live demonstration today. We'll be sharing some screenshots. Essentially, if you do wish to see a live demo, please feel free to contact us after the webinar. So in order to introduce some of these specific risk management areas, I feel I first need to introduce the proactivity suite for those of you that are not familiar. So one of the key ways that Dakota differentiates ourselves from some of the other vendors that are out there in this space is the fact that we're fully integrating EH&S regulatory content into our proactivity suite. This information is managed by an internal team of analysts who are continually monitoring the Federal Register for proposed and action forcing changes that are then implemented into our suite on a monthly basis. This content is integrated throughout the applications, but one of the key areas where this integration takes place is our profiler application. This tool runs on a decision tree engine, which asks you a series of yes or no questions and ends up showing the exact regulations that apply to any given facility. We then give you the ability to perform a compliance audit here in our auditor application based off of that applicability analysis. So we're only showing you those audit protocols which are meaningful to the facility, again, based off of the regulations that we found to be applicable. Coming out of an audit, you may have some findings. Those can be transferred into our tracer application, which is the task management tool. You may also set up a series of proactive compliance task plans based off the regulations that you found to be applicable here in the profiler application. So both proactive compliance calendars as well as corrective actions are managed here in one central location. Now on the other side of the suite, we have our Scout application for management apps. Injury illness exists in this area as well as some of the other incident supporting mechanisms like near miss, property damage, environmental spill, behavior observation, as well as managing change, calculating emissions, and many other areas. Similar to the profiler and auditor applications, these applications allow you to generate action items and corrective actions, which also flow into the central task management area. These tools all come with a series of dashboards and reports for analyzing and getting information out of the system. So regardless of who's using the application, you're always going to be able to support decision making through appropriate dashboards and reports. All right, so the first area we'd like to highlight is the ability to track regulatory changes. Worker safety is one of many topics that are covered in our regulatory library. As I mentioned, as you determine applicability within the system, we're going to highlight in green folders areas that apply to an organization, and then we gray out areas that do not apply. As we update the information on a monthly basis, if there are any regulatory changes that might impact you, we're going to highlight the areas where those changes exist with the green triangles you see over here on the left. We're also going to highlight the CFR where the change exists, and in green text, in the summary of the information we provide, we're going to highlight the exact change. So this is going to save users time and eliminate uncertainty when it comes to tracking regulatory changes. Next, we have reliable record keeping audits. Something Jay mentioned is a way to mitigate risk. You can see here within our auditor application, we provide the same hierarchy concept of the regulatory domain. Here we're looking at OSHA's accident incident reporting requirements. We'll tell you the number of protocols that apply to you. We'll present you with a protocol that's true to the regulatory standard, and the protocol itself remains linked to those citations that are driving the obligation. In Tracer, you have the ability to send corrective actions after an audit. You also have the ability to establish and manage proactive tasks. So whether it be a reminder to post OSHA 300A summary reports or to periodically review action plans, review fire prevention plans, or some of the other examples you see listed here, you'll be able to manage these in one central location. Users may be given access to the exact tasks that they're responsible for, where they can manage them in a data table, such as what you see listed here, which is sortable, configurable by the user. They may also prefer to see information in a dashboard summary view, or even in a calendar for any given month. Last, we have an example of leading indicators. I think I saw a question come through in the Q&A about some leading indicators we would suggest. And this screenshot, we're showing observation information. So in using Dakota's BBS observation application, you'll be able to accumulate statistics such as percentage of safe versus unsafe observations per month, some trends around total counts, types of observations, as well as organizing this information into specific categories. Other examples of leading indicators might be training percentage, on-time completion percentage of assigned tasks, completion of regulatory profiles, recent audit results, to name a few. And that takes us to our third and final poll question, I believe.
All right, thanks, Cody. And so we've been talking a lot about how the various information to include in there. We'd like for people to share information about how they are handling the OSHA 300 reporting within their organization. So I'm going to go ahead and launch one last poll. And the question is, how do you submit your 300A to OSHA? And so this is really around organizational structure, and if you're uploading data or if you're manually transcribing the data. And we know everyone's a little bit different, but I think this will be a good benchmark for what people are doing, especially amongst people interested in this topic. And looks like responses are coming in. We'll give you just 10 more seconds to get your response in, and then we'll share the results. All right, and we're going to end the poll now. And here we go. And so as expected, it was kind of evenly mixed, with corporate EHS uploading data to the ITA being the heaviest there. Jay, any observations on that? Anything you'd like to share?
No, it's pretty well balanced.
Okay. All right, great. And so to move on to the summary, and we'll move into Q&A. I'll remind everyone now, we've got a lot of good questions in here. I know Jay and I have been answering some of them, but we'll take a live question, or we'll take questions here in a minute from the audience to discuss for everyone. All right. And so a quick summary here of the kind of OSHA reporting checklist. Understand the OSHA reporting requirements and deadlines, which we've covered. Review OSHA's recent guidelines to determine if COVID illnesses are reportable. I know that some people have asked for these slides. Jay did a really nice job putting a summary of that information together. So we will share this deck out after the presentation. Educating and training workers on COVID-19 policies, taking advantage of technology to streamline that data collection and reporting, of course, understanding risks related to OSHA inspection triggers and procedures, and then developing a risk management strategy that includes regulatory change tracking, record keeping, audits, and tracking of corrective actions and leading indicators, as Cody highlighted. One thing I'd like to point out is we have been writing a lot about this topic. If you go visit Dakota's blog, our last 3 articles are covering both for general information about record keeping changes and tips for success, also some information for Dakota clients on how to set up your sites to get the information out so that you can make that reporting real simple by extracting the CSV file that's needed for the ITA upload to the ITA. So please check us out. And we do have a newsletter. You can scroll down to the bottom and subscribe to that if you're not already. All right, and we will move on to Q&A. So Jay, I'll leave it to you to pick some ones that you'd like to tackle here.
Yeah, there was one that came in fairly early, and it had to do with the heart attack and that issue. And you have to remember, there's the case of about reportable versus recordable. Recordable doesn't go on your OSHA log. Reportable means I pick up the phone and I call OSHA. The heart attack situation is I pick up the phone and I call OSHA. Okay, whether or not anything comes of that, it's just, once again, it'll ultimately drive down, is it work related? That's why they say most heart attacks wind up not being work related, which is why they wind up not being recordable. But there is this difference between the reportable versus recordable. There was also a question about the 180-degree cap that OSHA allows you to use versus that 5-year look back. Those are 2 independent things. If you have a worker who gets injured and it turns out that 2 years later, the worker, and you can establish the work related and the connection, 2 years later, that worker has to have surgery and it becomes lost time. That means you have to go into that OSHA log from 2 years ago. And if it's the case, if you don't have a record for the incident already, you got to create one. And it's now an OSHA recordable and a lost time record potentially. So as I say, the 180-day cap and the 5-year look back are totally independent. Cody, gave some good examples on what you might use for leading indicators. Certainly number of safety and audit inspections. Are you doing your training? How much money are you spending in the safety realm? These are some other ones I've seen in the past. How quickly, when you have an issue that comes out of a BBS observation or a safety incident, how quickly are you turning that around and getting the corrective actions? So those are all good leading indicators. There was a question about a regulatory citation for the anti-retaliation rule. That's going to take us a little while to actually find the citation where that's embedded. But it's the 2016 anti-retaliation rule is where the drug testing prohibition came from. I'm trying, let's see, is there anything else?
Yeah, if you can read those out loud as you address them, Jay, that'd be great.
Okay.
Or you can make them live so the audience can see them.
Let's see, there's a question about who has to report. Does every site need to report to the ITA or just the corporate OSHA? And again, what you're reporting to the ITA is your 300A data, not the OSHA log in this question. As a general rule, every individual site is responsible for having its data entered into the IDA. OSHA calls it establishment. There is an exception to that rule. And the example, one of the most easiest to understand, might be a company that owns a bunch of gas stations or these quick marts. The same activities are occurring at each of the facilities, and it's the same ownership. So that kind of an entity can report all of their information under one hat. But if you don't have that commonality of the activities and commonality of the ownership, then each establishment is reported by its own. And those are really, I think, the questions that we have up here that I see.
We did get one question that came in via chat. I guess I'd like to respond to. Some people were asking if the software can be used globally. They mentioned they have a global company and if it just supports OSHA reporting. So Jay, you want to respond to that, or Cody?
Yeah, I think you did a good job of responding in the chat, but I'll summarize it. The software itself can be used across the globe. It's browser-based, so as long as you have a standard modern web browser and an internet connection, you're able to access it. It also supports multiple languages based off of the user's browser setting. It'll be displayed in their local language. As far as the design and the data that's captured within our incident management application, it is intended to support US regulatory requirements, so your OSHA record keeping and reporting. However, it's configurable. So for organizations that have facilities outside of the US that would like to use it for the same purpose, we are happy to work with you to define the data that needs to be captured as well as the reports that need to be generated by the system.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and somebody did point out that in that case I gave about that surgery 2 years later, if the case had not shown up on that log 2 years before, that would have been a new case when they went out for surgery. But if the case was recorded, maybe they just got painkillers or something at the time. So you had it recorded on that log 2 years ago, then the surgery now is not a new case and it would go back to the old record. So again, you have to look, is it a new case or is it a pre-existing case? Number of factors that have to be evaluated to determine where something, if it's recordable and in what year it gets recorded.
Okay, great. So Jay, I'll leave it to you if there's anything else that you'd like to tackle on this list.
I don't see anything else on the list.
Okay. All right, we'll pause just for one more minute and see if anyone has any additional questions they'd like to put through. As we wait here, I'll just note that if you are interested in learning more about Dakota, about our products and services, please feel free to visit us online. You can request a demo on our website, dakotasoft.com. Some of those resources I mentioned earlier around the blog, we also blog posts related to this topic. You'll also find previously recorded webinars on the website, white papers, analyst reports that we've sponsored, So please visit us online or reach out to us at info@dakotasoft.com. And it looks like we'll wrap it up for today. So I want to thank Cody and Jay for putting this presentation together. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And we hope to talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye all.
Thanks all.